This network may contain controversial topics. The views and opinions expressed on the Paraspeak Radio Network are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other network hosts or advertisers.
You are listening to WPAR Digital Broadcasting, home of the Paraspeak Radio Network.
Another dimension.
And these entities, they're set out to destroy your life. And you can let them or you can fight it.
She was exercised and voices came out of her that were not in any way her voice.
It's like a black whirlwind of energy. So a really dark figure. The eyes really drew me in. So pitch black. Took me and slammed me back to the bed on my back. In there, paralyzed. The chair with him moved back about 5 feet with him in it.
It started walking across the floor, and he said, beware.
Just remarkable. Things would fall right from the ceiling.
Going into a haunted house like the last thing I want to do.
Demonology Today.
Demonology Today. Class is now in session.
Welcome to Demonology Today. It's our network premiere on Paraspeak Radio Network, and we call it, Season 4.5. We changed networks mid-season, but we consider it kind of like a premiere show because it's a premiere on the network. And as usual, we like to get a great guest on.
Okay, Johnny Zaffis is more than great, but you can downplay him.
So John goes way back, and we're going to ask questions that I otherwise wouldn't ask him because
he's not going to tell you his age. I already asked him.
He's considered the godfather of the paranormal for a good reason, but I think there's a generation probably knew him more for the Haunted Collector, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But welcome to the show, John.
Well,
welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
And it has been a while since I've had you on a radio show, about 7 years. I took my little hiatus break, with family problems, as I had told you. And I tell you what, it's good to have you back on again. I remember the old days.
Oh, hey, again, it's like I said, it's always good to come on and chit-chat and catch up.
Cool. But I'm going to ask questions for the benefit of our listeners. You ever know we consider this like a coffee table show where we discuss things amongst ourselves instead of just a Q&A kind of thing. But I think that, for the benefit of the listeners, I'd like them to go back in time and ask you how it all began with your involvements in the paranormal and what you do.
Well, I was 15, 16 years old. Had a sighting of a shadow form at the foot of the bed. It was very tall, transparent, and it was dark in color, and it was shaking its head back and forth, and went downstairs and started telling my mom about it. And, I described everything to her, and she said, did it say anything? I said, no. I said, just the head was going back and forth, and that's when she had said to me at that point, she goes, that was my dad, because I was 4 years old when my grandfather passed away, and she said he was a very stern man, really didn't say too much of anything, but when something was up, he would just shake his head back and forth. And shortly right after that, a few days, my grandmother had passed away, and she had lived with us. And that's what really made me delve into trying to figure out some of these things with the paranormal, because I never had an experience prior to it, and really, there was no reason for me to believe in any of these things outside of, just hearing stories, growing up and being part of a paranormal family. Ed and Lorraine Warren, my aunt and uncle, he always would tell stories, and when I started telling him of the experience and everything, and, he just looked at me, he goes, you didn't believe what I was saying? I went, nope. I just didn't. And again, that was a very important tool, because today I can relate to that and say, when somebody tells me, I've never had an experience, never seen anything, so therefore I have difficulty accepting the fact that the paranormal exists, and I can relate to that. But that's when I just started reading different things and picking up different books, and eventually just started going to notorious hauntings in the New England area, and eventually started working with my uncle and getting involved with cases. Then I went to learn about demonology, and my uncle really did not want me to get involved with it. We fought tooth and nail over that, but it just came down to the point where he just said to me, I'm better off teaching you some of this so you got a better understanding of it, and if anything, occurs or happens, he goes, I'll be a source for you to be able to ask information, and I can keep an eye on you, because if anything happens to you, I'm not dealing with my sister. So, and, it was a very slow process. He would tell me different things to read, different books, and eventually going to meet different people, shaman, medicine men, Buddhists, rabbis, priests, ministers, all these different spiritual people, and it really gave me an eye-opening understanding of things before jumping right into it. And eventually started working on negative and demonic cases, and seeing and witnessing things brings it to a whole new thing for you. Your reality changes, and it makes you realize that there's just so much that happens out there that you don't comprehend or understand until you witness it. And, here I am today, 42 years later.
Fantastic. The childhood thing seems to be common for the people that have the more extensive background. It gets started early. If you're 40-something and then you're just now getting started, hey, that's great. But, there's so much more when you had all this kind of a trial and error, too. And that's a hard thing to do, to pull off late in life. Like, say you want to learn how to play guitar and join a band. These other guys that have been playing since they're young are way ahead of you, But, it does seem to be around that age, 15, 16, 17. I think even Keith Johnson was telling a story. I have my shadow story around that. I think I was 18. But that's interesting. I don't think I've ever asked you that before. Like I said, there's many things that we can pick your brain about. And how it begun is definitely one thing. So that moves on to the obvious thing in order, the first encounter as an investigator. What was your first memorable encounter?
Shadow figures. We had gone to a location, and again, this is prior to working with Ed quite a bit as time went on, but prior to that, seeing shadow figures. Because all of us, I think, really take that step back and try to figure out, is it our imagination? Was it a reflection? Are our eyes playing tricks on us? Oh, yeah. And again, I've seen it and witnessed it for the second time, and it was a location in Stratford, Connecticut, the old Phelps homestead, known to be extremely haunted since the 1800s, a very well-documented case. And the experiences there were probably something that made me look at it a little bit differently, because I knew some of the history of it, knew some of the things, but two other people that were with me, two of my buddies, we all witnessed things occurring and happening during the course of trying to spend time in there, and that made me take that step back and, again, look at things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as getting into residential cases, the very first one was a family with several little children, and working with them, they had a lot of activity going on, a lot of things were happening in there, and I still can remember, where there were a couple of little trinket-type things that just automatically moved. Now, Ken, this is still, again, the earlier years, none of us had camcorders, none of us had a lot of equipment. We had the basics of a tape recorder and a camera with us, and, those were our tools. And I still remember taking that step back and not understanding and comprehending the difference between, psychic kinetic energy, poltergeist activity. But studying it and learning it gives you a better comprehension on how some of these things pull together, how they manifest, how people can, harness the energy with the combination of the spirit realm combining in and really getting things to escalate out of control.
Yeah, and after all these years of being exposed to to negative. Do you find yourself more sensitive to when there's a negative spirit, say, than early on? Has it kind of tuned up your sixth sense?
Absolutely. I don't necessarily always look at things from that perspective, or would I ever in a million years say that I'm a gifted individual? No. But I do feel that when you deal with a lot of investigations, whether they're, historical places or residential places, I do feel that sense kicks in with you. And I believe that tool is sharpened. And it's something that we use, especially within the demonology realm, to be able to warn us and be able to tell us, okay, something's not adding up right. It doesn't feel right. It has a very heavy feeling, or a lot of different clues come into play. I think the more you're involved with it, and you know what to look for. I think as you're going through and as you get involved, over the course of years with dealing with people, when, you can usually tell when you get on the telephone if, somebody just got done watching a movie or they just got done reading a book and they're giving you exact things that are occurring. So again, I feel a lot of these tools come in handy, especially that perception of being able to sense if there's something you need to cue in on or something you need to pay closer attention to than you normally would, especially when dealing with anything on a negative level or demonic cases.
I wanted to play a clip. It is a clip from the Sally Jesse Raphael show, and you were in the audience on that one. Your aunt and uncle.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he said he was going way back, John, he was going way back.
Play that. So, Rob, when you're ready to take that away.
But if you ask the gentleman who's sitting right over there, who spent 9 weeks in the house, what he had also had happened to him, similar attacks.
Where's the gentleman?
Right there.
Yes. What happened to you?
We were there for 9.5 weeks trying to help Carmen and Snedeker. When we go in on these cases, we have to document.
Who's we?
The researchers. I work with Ed and Lorraine doing their investigating. I'm one of the persons that was in there for the 9.5 weeks. I'm amazed at hearing all these people that weren't even in the home. You weren't there. You weren't witness to it. A neighbor sitting here with a book, a whole journal, stating on what took place in this case. She documented things around the clock. Why don't you come over and see if you could help the family? Why don't you see if you could offer some help? You're saying there was no priest there. I know there was priest there. The Roman Catholic Church was involved with this. Now you want us to turn around and give you the name of the priest. He prefers to stay anonymous.
They said was there.
No, he don't.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember that one?
Wow. Wow.
Is that a walk through memory lane or what?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
goodness.
that was, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, my gosh, I've completely forgot all about that. Wow.
Was that a bad case, John?
The haunting in Connecticut, the Carmen and Al Snedeker case, was extremely monumental as far as my career, what the family went through, what the children went through, all the researchers, everybody that was involved with that case, including there was 3 Roman Catholic priests that were working on that case. The day of the exorcism of the home, there were 3 priests that were there that day. And the neighbor across the street, to this day, is just to that point where she still insists nothing ever transpired in that house. And it just amazed me because she was standing there watching when the priests were arriving. I don't know if she expected them to show up in garb, fully dressed. They don't usually do that.
Probably.
Yeah. You mean the hat?
Looking like penguins? Yes.
Yeah. It just amazes me the way people perceive things, the conclusions that they come to. I mean, we still deal with it. That case is, almost 26 years ago, in August when the final stages were taking place with that. But again, we still deal with that today with anyone that goes public. People that choose to go public still have to pay that price of people doing this and going back at them. And I've quite often will tell people, you make that choice to go public, that's good, because I do think the word needs to get out there. But be aware, because you will be criticized, you'll be scrutinized, people will turn on you that you least expect to turn on you. Yeah. It's a difficult choice to make, but I do feel today it's a lot more open. I think people have a better comprehension of understanding some of these things compared to 26 years ago. But it's still there. The retaliation of individuals, neighbors, or people feel that the price of the property is going to decline because something took place. All these things come into factor with a lot of individuals, even still today.
That one was the case that you experienced perhaps your most horrific events, and you were there for 9 weeks, so it was almost like the odds were that you were going to experience something there. That night, when you started walking around the house and you experienced that demonic entity.
When that evening, and it was August, all the windows were open, and it was very hot. It started getting very cold, and most of us know if you start getting cold, that means our energy is getting drawn from us. And everyone had gone to sleep. I was just journalizing some things from the course of the day. And I got up and, I started walking into the hallway. And there was a very nasty, nasty smell there. Now, I walked closer towards the front of the staircase that had gone up to the second level. At this point, the smell was terrible. I was very cold. At this point, I was screaming and yelling for anybody to respond, but nobody responded whatsoever. And at the top of the stairs, I seen what started to form. It was extremely large, massive. It was transparent. I was able to see some murky colors to it, and it started coming down the staircase. And I audibly, because that's the only way I can possibly conceive today how it transpired, was that it had said, "Do you know what they did to us?" And at that point, as it was coming down the staircase, my natural reaction was to get my car keys just to get out of there, because I did not know what to expect. I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I think the biggest fear factor that went through my mind was, if something like this can appear to me at this point in time, what the heck's happening back home where my wife and my kids were? When I got home, everybody was sound asleep, nothing was happening, but I did make a decision. That was it. I wanted nothing to do with these cases. I wasn't going to ever get involved with the work again. And, for 3 days, I accepted absolutely no phone calls from nobody. Nobody. And finally, a telephone call came in from Bishop, very good friend of the family. And my wife came and got me. She said, "Bishop's on the phone." And, I went and got on because I wouldn't refuse a call from him. And he goes, "John, we don't even know what's going on with you. You're not telling nobody nothing." So I explained to him the entire event, what had happened, what transpired. And I always called him Bish. I said, "Bish," I said, "You know what? You can keep your devils and demons and all this other stuff. I want nothing to do with it ever again." And he got very quiet. And at that point in time, he goes, "Well, then you're going to let it win." And, and I just said to him, I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" He said, "John, its intent was to scare you enough so that you would never want to do this work anymore, to be able to help people, and to, just totally get you away from it, because it feels that you're a huge threat." And, as we were talking, going back and forth and everything, I realized what he was saying to me, and it dawned on me that, he was right. I made a decision to go back in. Was I scared? Yeah. And I've always said that to this day. But I knew the exorcism was lined up. I knew it was already sanctioned. I knew they were preparing and getting ready to do it. And, shortly right after that, it was performed, and, everything was broken that was tied in with that piece of property. So again, that altered me. That changed my perspective at looking at things and realizing what there is out there, what people can witness, what you can experience, from these things manifesting and pulling together and, tormenting you. And it's just the way it goes with this work, with this field.
Yes.
You learn after a while not to let these things get to you emotionally because that's what it looks for. So today, when different things occur, different things happen, it takes a lot to really get me riled up or to really say, uh-oh, this is something that's super hardcore. And I haven't witnessed anything like that since that home to that degree. And at this point, I really don't want to. I'm getting up there now, and I just don't want to fall over and have a heart attack.
That's good things, too. But it was good to have you in the trenches because you're a pioneer in this. You took over where Ed Warren had become disabled after he had his stroke. Yeah, that was a drop, and then you were the go-to guy for that, especially on the East Coast, where there seems to be a lot more cases. But you made yourself available in the same way that your aunt and uncle did. So I want to, for everybody out there that you helped, and thank you for that, because that carried on that tradition. Not charging for investigations. That passed over to TV shows and groups. It was an inspiration for these paranormal investigators that came around, especially in the last 20 years. So, but I have to ask you this question. Do you know what they did to us? What was the reveal of why that might have been stated? That's the curious investigator side asking there. I don't remember if you ever told me.
Yeah, no, which is okay. Totally understandable. Again, it was never proven or disproven, but it was rumored that there was necrophilia that had transpired when it was an operating funeral parlor. So it was told to us that somebody was discharged from working there because they were caught in the act. And again, too, we know when some of these types of events take place, again, that there's other rituals and there's things that could possibly be tying in with this type of environment and can create and bring in things on a demonic and a negative level. And these things can remain dormant for years until you move into a place, especially that practicing was done. What's going to be targeted are the children, which is what ended up happening with Carmen's eldest son. He just seemed to be the victim because he was the weakest. He was going through, chemo and everything else, and it just targeted him. We have a better understanding today, I feel, of different types of scenarios from a lot of us sharing information and being able to bring information to the forefront that, if you have a person that has any type of disabilities or they're sick or anything, and there's something around, they will gravitate right towards that individual. So that's usually a key factor you always look for in these types of environments. But here again, like I said, several stories were shared with us in regards to a employee that was, working at the funeral parlor, but I've never seen any hardcore evidence. I do believe Carmen did have something that was substantiated as far as saying and stating that there was a possibility or that something did occur in there when it was a funeral parlor.
Yeah, I think that's a likely conclusion. I think I would go by some of the type of spirits there. You had spirits of death, and Carmen got attacked by an incubus. So that type of spirit was there, which would go hand in hand because of the type of place it is. It's not supposed to be. Well, I guess people live upstairs. So they actually lived there before when it was a funeral parlor, right? And they just worked out of the house, so to speak, right?
Well, prior. The family did live up on the second floor, but then they sold the property off, and it sat there for several years. Then a real estate agent had purchased it, and the second floor was rented out. There were a couple of different families that had moved in and out of there, and Carmen and Al had rented the first floor.
Okay. On Bishop, this brings up this question. Me and you have gone to stick up for Bishop Robert McKenna, who I've never had the pleasure of working with. I'm not on the East Coast, so he was older even 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And I want to know, has there been a priest who's stepped up like Bishop McKenna?
Well, Bishop McKenna is, now retired. He had moved back to Michigan, his home state. and there's a priest that had taken over. But I mean, as far as the field today, we have many denominations of clergy that had stepped up to the forefront. That do jump right in today to be able to assist and help, and that's a very positive thing to me that has happened.
Yes.
Even the Roman Catholic Church today, is opening up and recognizing the fact of our whole underworld of demonology, and the exorcist that many of us have worked with over the course of years. I've been fortunate enough to attend two of the seminars, or the weekends, if you will, at monasteries where a lot of the priests would come together for training and speaking and sharing information on what they're dealing with in their parishes as far as a lot of these things going. So we really have taken a step forward tremendously as far as doors being opened with a lot of spiritual people willing to help and jump in and trying to learn and understand a lot about exorcisms and deliverance and a lot of this and counseling, which is, to me, something I never ever thought I'd ever end up seeing or, witnessing happening with the doors opening up as much as they have.
Yeah, just when we first started talking shop and so forth, behind the scenes even, I think there was only 15 exorcists in the United States back then. There was 12. There wasn't very many then even. I can imagine what it was like when you were at Carmen's and you tried to get a priest who would close it, not just investigate it, but actually do the house exorcism, the ritual cleansing, the Roman ritual, and it's changed. I think there's about 55. We had Father Gary Thomas, another a little more accessible. You got about 3 or 4 of them that actually are in America. Father Gary Thomas and Father Vince Lambert in Indiana. We've had both of them on, and there's one in Kansas City, but it's changed. The playfield's changed, and again, it is in part because of getting the reality out. Like when you told Carmen, if you get the story out, you're actually helping others. And you're going to get the negative of people accusing you of fraud, and because there's always going to be people who don't believe this stuff, and that's including you out there. Yeah.
Again, too, Ken, it's something that I've learned to, I think, come to terms with as far as, a family or an individual or anybody goes public. It's never going to change. We're always going to have that, and it's always going to be in the forefront. With people scrutinizing and looking for everything they possibly can think of to be able to debunk a case or, find something in that individual's life to, crucify them over. And I always say that. But going back to the clergy with the priests and, again, there's a lot more coming to the forefront, a lot more of them saying, yes, I do get involved with, doing the prayers, doing exorcisms, and doing different things. So that's been a very big positive door opener as far as the Roman Catholic Church goes.
You have your new book coming out, the one that you're writing with Rosemary, and originally I remember seeing the cover. It was a bride's dress or something. It was one of the haunted tales that goes with it. And the new book will be out, is that a September release? And what's it called?
She's got a pre-release happening in August. I don't quite understand how it all works, but, when it comes into all that, but there's going to be a pre-release in August. I know at this point in time she is working on getting everything set up on Amazon to do the pre-orders, and I believe it'll be fully available in September, to my knowledge. So it was a project that, over the past several years, just like many things, 3 different books that I've been working on were just sitting there, and finally over the past several months had the time to be able to get the information pulled together and get things submitted to Rosemary, so she was able to pull the whole book together. And again, it's something I'm looking forward to, and I'm glad it finally happened. And just thrilled to death to be able to do a project with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. I've wanted to for many, many years, and it finally happened.
That's fantastic, too. And a lot of people have been waiting for another book, too, from you, and especially about some of these collectibles, because we've seen some shots of the sword and the puppets, and it wouldn't be me to not ask about the puppets. I had a thing about those things when I was a kid, since I saw that Twilight Zone episode with the, with the ventriloquist puppet, like.
Well, it's it's so funny you're even saying that too, because over the past several days we were doing some functions up here in the New England area, and Andrea Pyron and George Lopez were staying here at the house because we were all lecturing together at several locations, and she had brought that up at one point in time because she came back up and she goes, "John, what's with the puppets?" She says she's got several different puppets down there, and she said they're just plain creepy. And I said, well, people collect them. Yeah. I said people collect them, and sometimes they pick them up, and, they'll add them to their collections, and sometimes they start to wreak havoc, and we just do the process of elimination to see what could be causing it, what might be wreaking havoc, and make a decision, on their end, what they would like to do. They want to keep it. We can try to bind it and let it stay there, or, it could be removed. That's usually up to the family to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, a lot of times, as you know, Ken, most people just say, no, just get the stupid thing out of here. I don't even want to deal with it, and just so we could move forward. So, again, puppets are a unique thing, and there's several of them down in the museum.
Are you taking all of these items on tour, or just the ones that have the more significant story attached to them? I understand that you're going to do a tour with the items, right? Is that correct?
No, I do. I'm doing a convention up in Michigan, Yeah, where I'm just going to have several of the items with me. It's a talk that I do, and I just display, and I usually try to pick items that people aren't familiar with, that they don't hear the same stories of, and I'll just set them up on the stage and just talk about the stories, what they did or what they were involved with. But, I mean, no taking the whole museum or anything on tour like that, gosh, no. No.
Okay. That would be a little too much. Yeah, at the end of that movie, The Possession, about the Dybbuk box, it's like, hey, happy ending, you can ride off in the sunset. Oh, it's just been rear-ended by a semi, or however he got. That's all we need to happen to John, Taking all these things in, and all the toys come out and start strangling you when you're driving.
That would be my luck.
Oh, boy. Yeah, and that seems to be kind of a target for children, but, adults have their thing for that, too, with toys coming to life, as, children are afraid of the toys that kind of look scary in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And these things seem to just love to swell up the fear in everybody, and that's for sure.
Do you have a favorite haunted item that you can tell us a little bit about, one that really fascinated you and captured your attention and made you think, I got to find out about where this came from and why it's haunted? It just drew you. Do you have one that is your favorite?
I really don't have anything that is really a favorite, and the reason being is because all of them have unique stories, and they all tie in with just some of the most bizarre things that we just look at, teacups or a dress, some of the most bizarre things. But I think probably the most significant items that mean anything to me whatsoever, the monetary value isn't there. It's just things that, my uncle would give me over the course of years. We'd be out working on cases, and he would say, kid, take it and throw it in your collection. Put it in your collection. And, yeah, I mean, this was continuous, and, I mean, that would happen. And a lot of times now, I'm very glad for that it transpired and went the way it did, because I'll think about the story and I'll think about the item, and it's always something that I associate with my uncle. So therefore, things like that probably mean more to me than, something, substantial as far as the occult items, or, things that were in a super negative haunting or something otherwise, where, there's so many different things, and they have so many different meanings that I just look at everything so differently, as I go through and look at the items, because I continuously get that. And if I walk through and I look at something, I go, well, maybe no, maybe that, no, maybe this. It's a very difficult thing. You should have seen what I was going through when we were trying to do the book. It was crazy, because Rosemary says, well, pick your favorite items, and Rosemary comes over to visit continuously. We don't live that far away from each other, and we're very, very good friends. And I go, Rosemary, that's like looking for a needle in the haystack with me. I mean, that's one of the most difficult things. So, I just picked a whole bunch of items, and I said, guess what? You make the choice. I said, you make the choice of what items you feel are going to be extremely interesting to people. And she did, and she picked quite a few different items to talk about that, I ordinarily don't, or they're not on the site, or they haven't been on, the shows or something.
Well, that was good. She was able to sift through quite a few of them.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Now, what kind of precautions do you take? You have a lot of haunted objects, and what kind of security measures, precautions do you take that people don't come in contact with any of the bad mojo that these things used to carry?
Well, there's bindings that are done. There's prayers. I use a lot of holy water, blessed sea salt. Clergy friends of mine, when they come over to visit, I put them to work.
Oh, isn't that nice of you? We do the same thing.
Say, hey, do me a favor, and, could you please, bless the items and do the bindings and so forth, because there's a small barn on the property where the items all go before they come into the big barn, and I just set them up or put them on the counter or put them on shelves or anything. So there is a lengthy process that I do go through, and continuously too, throughout the museum. Periodically, there's no set rhythm or rhyme. I'll go through and do what I need to do, or like I said, if any of my spiritual friends stop by, I always ask them, to do the house and also to do the barn.
That's a great precaution. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know how to handle haunted objects. And
well, again, too, that's something that is a very popular thing today, but I think it's extremely dangerous. People collect them.
Can you explain why
amazing.
to some of our listeners that don't understand exactly what a haunted object is and what it can do to your life?
Yes, and people are purchasing them and bringing them into their homes, and
yes, they are.
Collecting all kinds of things, and then I'll get an email or a telephone call. Gee, John, I got activity going. Well, what do you expect? What do you want me to do? You got 100 haunted items in your house now, and I told you not to bring them in, and you're doing it anyways. But again, like I said, it's an extremely popular thing. People are doing it, and
they get big money on eBay, don't they, John? Have you seen some of those auctions for haunted items? Thousands of dollars. It's just ridiculous, whether the item is haunted or not.
Yeah, I've heard. I very seldomly will even go on to look. It's just something that, like I said, it bothers me, but anytime I say too much or anything, everybody gets mad at me and goes, oh, you just don't want anybody else to have them. No, I just don't think it's a good idea to keep them in your home. If you got a building on your property and, you keep them in there, then that's perfectly fine, but you're just going to end up opening a door up and wreaking havoc by bringing those things into your personal space.
I think that's the hardest thing is trying to explain people that you already explained that to them, and why are they calling you now?
Yeah.
It's going on, and it's absolutely unavoidable. Would you tell our listeners, is there ever such thing as an object that once it is haunted and once it is occupied by something very, very evil, John, Is it ever safe to bring in your home at all? Would you ever tell somebody, sure, at some point it should be safe? Or would you recommend that they just not ever bring it back into their home again?
I always, when we deal with the things on a negative level, it's a very fashionable thing. People love collecting these things and bringing them in today from different type of practices and rituals and things like that. No, please don't put these types of things in your home. It doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're getting it done. There's an intent and purpose with occult items. It's done deliberately. So therefore, that is one of the most difficult things to be able to bind or break that type of energy. Once it starts intermingling within your space, in your energy, you're going to reactivate something, and there's not too much you can do about it because you're willingly doing this.
And we tell people it's a legal right. They legally give them a right. Whatever tribe, evil, demon, whatever, they've been given legal access to their immediate space, their immediate living space, their spiritual space. And undoing that is very, very, very difficult.
Very, very difficult. And like I said, even explaining to people, as we all do, and we try to get people to understand that, it just amazes me the amount of people that will take the chance to do it. It's just mind-boggling today that, I'm not worried about it, I'm just going to bring it in, and no, I don't think anything will happen. And, well, then we end up getting an email or a telephone call about it.
I think that we were just talking to another author in the field of the paranormal and demonology and exorcism, and they basically summed it up in a word that we just didn't even think about. People want to believe so badly they don't believe. And they end up inviting this stuff either through a Ouija board, a haunted object, whatever it is, and all of a sudden they definitely have a reason to believe that they can't argue with because they can't make it go away. Yes. Do you get a lot of calls from people that have played with the Ouija boards and all of a sudden think, well, I thought it was just a toy?
I would say not any different than years ago. I think the significance of us all speaking on warning people are very well aware of it. And again, people do the same thing. They'll pick the board up, bring it in, and start playing with it, opening up the doors and wreaking havoc. And it's the same old, same old. Well, I didn't think it was going to work. I didn't think anything was going to happen.
Yeah.
And
that's the truth.
There's so much out there today for people watching the TV shows or watching movies or there's a tremendous amount of information out there that I find it difficult that a lot of these people don't already know some of this info.
It is hard to believe, but they don't. And I think what it is we're finding out as we get numerous cases that have talked to anywhere from a half a dozen to a dozen people before us, that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of information that mixes a lot of faith systems and belief systems to where they're so confused they really don't know, John, how to get away from what they started getting into in the first place because they didn't believe it was for real. Mm-hmm. We have a question from the chat room, if I can interject real quick. Ken, do you mind?
Oh, yeah. Let's keep
going.
going.
Have someone that is going to really look forward to seeing you at the Michigan Paracon and wanting to know if you're going to bring a friend called Simon. Now, can you tell us what is Simon, and are you bringing Simon to Michigan?
Simon's a little puppet doll type thing, and that was one of the items that I had brought last year that a person had, and it was wreaking havoc and causing a lot of problems within the person's home. No, Simon will not be coming this year. I'm going to be bringing different items.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
No, I try to, like I said, again, bring things that are a little bit different and, not anything that's too hardcore because I don't want to have to go to a convention and have to start working.
Exactly. You're actually coming there to help people, not to have to work there.
This is true.
Oh, my goodness.
Haunted lecture hall. Is Simon in the book that you're in, Rosemary, working on?
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure, to be perfectly honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Keith Johnson's got Paranormal Realities, Volume 3. I can see, John, Volume 2 and Volume 3 on this type of thing, and other projects, definitely. And you've been so busy. You know, there was a time you were doing so many investigations, and we watched that. We have the DVD that's called Driving Out the Devil. And it has the sad case of Pat Reading. And you were trying
to... Yeah.
What happened with that
one.
case?
Gosh, I completely forgot about that one, too, again.
That's why I'm here to remind you, John.
Gosh. But, yeah, Pat Reading, you know, again, significant case in my career, and working on that for 4 years straight. It took 16 exorcisms to free Pat Reading for what she endured, what she went through, and what her family went through and everything. Just a horrific event, if you will, as far as an investigation that just never seemed to reach a point where it was ever going to come to an end. And it was Bishop McKenna. She was having some issues going on. They were very light issues with the last exorcism, but he had an inkling to go to the home. He asked me to meet him up at the home, and he just went right into doing the full exorcism and everything, and he was able to break it that day, which was phenomenal. You know, that the very last one was finally able to do it and free her from the last several years of her life of being possessed.
Boy.
And I understand she lost her battle with cancer shortly after that. At least she had a couple of years of peace. How many years after her deliverance was she her successful?
If I'm remembering correctly now, Ken, I think it was 7 or 8 years that good. she was literally freed of it. You know, an important element that most people don't talk about, they have to realize when these individuals go through what we call true possession, and once they're freed from it, they're never freed from paranormal activity that surrounds them continuously. And they must keep their guard up. They must continuously pray. They must guard themselves. So it's a battle, just like anything else that a person can go through, to be able to help protect themselves and to guard themselves.
That's a good note, especially these horrific cases that people they're marked for life. Not just investigators, but the victims.
Absolutely. And again, you know, that to me is an extremely important thing for people to understand it, because a lot of times when we watch any of the movies, they always show these beautiful endings, and the majority of the time, unfortunately, these poor individuals have to battle, and it's a continuous battle to be able to keep themselves free from, trying to take them back over again.
We're talking about movies here. That reminds me of something, too. I think it was 2000. My correspondence with you was on sort of the movie thing. I was asking you, and you were answering a lot of emails to your aunt and uncle's website, the NESPR website, and it was about Demonologist being turned into movies, but Warner Brothers is looking at it. And as you know, it took 14 years for them to get to it, finally and do it. And then it's not exactly, well, you got the Annabelle case in there, but I understand even Ralph Sarchi's book was looked at 10 years ago or so. They sure dragged their heels on this. So, John, is there going to be either a worthy movie portraying Carmen's case or one of these cases that you worked on? Is it possible we're going to see one of those things?
Well, we never know what's in the future, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Carmen was so disappointed about the way the last movie was done, but looks like Ralph had the same issues.
Unfortunately, yes. Ralph and I are extremely very good friends. We have remained friends, over all these years. And, again, you have to remember, Hollywood will do what they have to hype things up. It's just the nature of it. I have never seen a paranormal movie from a true event stick to just the facts. Not here again, Carmen's case is a good example. I mean, the events and everything that transpired in there, if they had just gone by the events and the things that actually happened in there, to me that would have been scary enough.
Yeah.
But they just do not, unfortunately, do that. It's never going to change. Hollywood just has the way of doing it. I mean, we can go back to Amityville, The Entity, The Devil in Connecticut. You could go back over all these movies, and it's the same thing. You know, all of us just sit there and watch them and go, I don't remember that. Or this didn't happen, and okay, now I got to try and explain this one. And that's exactly what each and every one of us do when, you know, the movies come out. But again, it's the fact that they're made for entertainment. They're made to scare people because that's what people enjoy. They love going to see, you know, anything on the paranormal that is going to be scary. If it's not scary, people are going to, especially today with, you know, the internet and everything, oh, it wasn't scary, don't waste your time going to see it. And they'll kill it, Ken. People will kill it. No pun intended, but, you know,
it's good.
It's the nature of Hollywood. It's something that I've tried to comprehend like so many other people out there. I mean, you know, Andrea Perron and her entire family, you know, I'm very good friends with them, and it was a very difficult thing when the movie came out, and so many of the events were different from what the original case was. But I, fortunately, was very good friends with Andrea, and I told her, I said, just brace yourself, because, oh no, John, that's not going to happen. I go, Andrea, I'm telling you, brace yourself. I says, it's Hollywood.
To be expected, but it still did do something. We watched the behind the, what do you call it, the extra features on that DVD called Exorcism in the 21st Century, something like that. It had primarily Father Portea was on there, the Spanish exorcist from Spain. Yeah. And if you watch the behind the scenes, there's a lot of extra interviews in there, and they're kind of hard to follow because you're listening to Father Amorth, you know, the former Vatican chief exorcist, talking Italian. You have to be on your toes to read the subtitles. It's like, let me read that again. You know, he says The Exorcist was his favorite movie, one of his favorite movies, because it brought the awareness in. So Ralph's movie's out now. It's still bringing in there, and it's showing that you don't, you know, get Ghostbusters with their ghost sucking machine that you dump into a big, you know, vat or anything like that. I mean, at least we're seeing things like, you know, rosaries being prayed on by the priest in the car. Which yeah, but, you know, so that's what, you know, it's good to come out there with this stuff. And he comes right out of the gate right away like you are. And we know how the media is on this stuff. I think we're coming to the top of the hour, by the way, John, and I wanted to see if you could stay the extra hour. Do you have to get up early tomorrow or anything?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. You got it, buddy. I'm here, and if you got questions coming in, you know, in the chat and anything, feel free to throw them out. I love it.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad to have you on board, and we're going to just go ahead and take a break for about 5 minutes, and we'll get a warning shot, so we'll be right back.
This network may contain controversial topics. The views and opinions expressed on the Paraspeak Radio Network are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other network hosts or advertisers.
You are listening to WPAR Digital Broadcasting, home of the Paraspeak Radio Network.
Catholic Demonologist Handbook by Kenneth Deal. The special underground edition is available now. Buy it now at CatholicDemonologist.com. With over 227 pages, it was written with those in mind who seek a higher learning of the studies of Christian Judeo-Demonology. Over 32 years of study, research, and experience has been put into this book. This more in-depth study will provide an answer to many questions about demonic hauntings and ghosts. Can demons read your mind? What are ghosts really here for? Why would some home renovations result in a haunted house? Why would a house seem haunted for one thing family, yet not another. What are shadow people? Sleep paralysis and when it's paranormal, incubus and succubus encounters, discerning a demonic from a human spirit, new theories and cold spots, poltergeists, and residual hauntings. All of these questions and many more will be addressed in this book. The Underground Edition is more of a personalized but still complete publication, which is available now. The Catholic Demonologist Handbook by Kenneth Deal. Buy it now in softcover edition. To purchase this book and for more information, visit CatholicDemonologist.com. That's www.CatholicDemonologist.com.
Hey, this is Nikki and Rob from W Paranormal Talk Radio. Do you love ghost stories and interesting history? Then we have an event for you.
Join the authors of Paranormal Michigan book series for a tour of Kalamazoo unlike any other. We'll take you on an amazing ghost tour of the Kalamazoo's most haunted locations, while sprinkling in stories of rowdy saloons and seemingly endless brothels.
The Haunted History of Kalamazoo tour is the only tour based on the local best-selling book, Haunted History of Kalamazoo.
Visit the tour's website at hauntedkalamazootours.com for rates, times, and to reserve your spot today.
This network may contain controversial topics. The views and opinions expressed on the Paraspeak Radio Network are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other network hosts or advertisers.
You are listening to WPAR Digital Broadcasting, home of the Paraspeak Radio Network.
Another world out, another dimension.
And these entities, they're set out to destroy your life. And you can let them or you can fight it.
She was exercised and voices came out of her that were not in any way her voice.
It's like a black whirlwind of energy. So a really dark figure. The eyes really drew me in. So pitch black, took me and slammed me back to the bed on my back. In there, paralyzed. The chair with him moved back about 5 feet with him in it.
It started walking across the floor, and he said, beware.
Just remarkable. Things would fall right from the ceiling.
Going into a haunted house is like the last thing I want to do.
Demonology Today.
Demonology Today. Class is now in session.
Welcome to Demonology Today. It's our network premiere on Paraspeak Radio Network, and we call it, Season 4.5. We changed networks mid-season, but we consider it kind of like a premiere show because it's a premiere on the network. And as usual, we like to get a great guest on.
Okay, Johnny Zaffis is more than great, but you can downplay him.
So John goes way back, and we're going to ask questions that I otherwise wouldn't ask him because
he's not going to tell you his age. I already asked him.
He's considered the godfather of the paranormal for a good reason, but I think there's a generation probably knew him more for the Haunted Collector, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But welcome to the show, John.
Well,
welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
And it has been a while since I've had you on a radio show, about 7 years. I took my little hiatus break, with family problems, as I had told you. And I tell you what, it's good to have you back on again. I remember the old days.
Oh, hey, again, it's like I said, it's always good to come on and chit-chat and catch up.
Cool. But I'm going to ask questions for the benefit of our listeners. You ever know we consider this like a coffee table show where we discuss things amongst ourselves instead of just a Q&A kind of thing. But I think that, for the benefit of the listeners, I'd like them to go back in time and ask you how it all began with your involvements in the paranormal and what you do.
Well, I was 15, 16 years old. Had a sighting of a shadow form at the foot of the bed. It was very tall, transparent, and it was dark in color, and it was shaking its head back and forth, and went downstairs and started telling my mom about it. And, I described everything to her, and she said, did it say anything? I said, no. I said, just the head was going back and forth, and that's when she had said to me at that point, she goes, that was my dad. because I was 4 years old when my grandfather passed away, and she said he was a very stern man. Really didn't say too much of anything, but when something was up, he would just shake his head back and forth. And shortly right after that, a few days, my grandmother had passed away, and she had lived with us. And that's what really made me delve into trying to figure out some of these things with the paranormal, because I never had an experience prior to it, and really, there was no reason for me to believe in any of these things outside of, just hearing stories, growing up and being part of a paranormal family. Ed and Lorraine Warren, my aunt and uncle, I mean, he always would tell stories, and when I started telling him of the experience and everything, and, he just looked at me, he goes, "You didn't believe what I was saying?" I went, "Nope." I just didn't. And again, that was a very important tool, because today I can relate to that and say, when somebody tells me, I've never had an experience, never seen anything, so therefore I have difficulty accepting the fact that the paranormal exists, and I can relate to that. But that's when I just started reading different things and picking up different books, and eventually just started going to notorious hauntings in the New England area, and eventually I started working with my uncle and getting involved with cases. Then I went to learn about demonology, and my uncle really did not want me to get involved with it. We fought tooth and nail over that, but it just came down to the point where he just said to me, "I'm better off teaching you some of this so you got a better understanding of it, and if anything, occurs or happens," he goes, "I'll be a source for you to be able to ask information, and I can keep an eye on you, because if anything happens to you, I'm not dealing with my sister." So, and, it was a very slow process. He would tell me different things to read, different books, and eventually going to meet different people, shaman, medicine men, Buddhists, rabbis, priests, ministers, all these different spiritual people, and it really gave me an eye-opening understanding of things before jumping right into it. And eventually started working on negative and demonic cases, and seeing and witnessing things brings it to a whole new thing for you. Your reality changes, and it makes you realize that there's just so much that happens out there that you don't comprehend or understand until you witness it. And, here I am today, 42 years later.
Fantastic. The childhood thing seems to be common for the people that have the more extensive background. It gets started early. If you're 40-something and then you're just now getting started, hey, that's great. But, there's so much more when you had all this kind of a trial and error, too. And that's a hard thing to do, pull off late in life. Like, say you want to learn how to play guitar and join a band. These other guys that have been playing since they're young are way ahead of you, But, it does seem to be around that age, 15, 16, 17. I think even Keith Johnson was telling a story. I have my shadow story around that. I think I was 18. But that's interesting. I don't think I've ever asked you that before. Like I said, there's many things that we can pick your brain about. And how it begun is definitely one thing. So that moves on to the obvious thing in order, the first encounter as an investigator. What was your first memorable encounter?
Shadow figures. We had gone to a location, and again, this is prior to working with Ed quite a bit as time went on, but prior to that, seeing shadow figures. Because all of us, I think, really take that step back and try to figure out, is it our imagination? Was it a reflection? Are our eyes playing tricks on us? Oh, yeah. And again, I've seen it and witnessed it for the second time, and it was a location in Stratford, Connecticut, the old Phelps homestead, known to be extremely haunted since the 1800s, a very well-documented case. And the experiences there were probably something that made me look at it a little bit differently, because I knew some of the history of it, knew some of the things, but two other people that were with me, two of my buddies, we all witnessed things occurring and happening during the course of trying to spend time in there, and that made me take that step back and, again, look at things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as getting into residential cases, the very first one was a family with several little children, and working with them, they had a lot of activity going on, a lot of things were happening in there, and I still can remember, where there were a couple of little trinket-type things that just automatically moved. Now, Ken, this is still, again, the earlier years, none of us had camcorders. None of us, had a lot of equipment. We had the basics of a tape recorder and a camera with us, and, those were our tools. And I still remember taking that step back and not understanding and comprehending the difference between, psychic kinetic energy, poltergeist activity. But studying it and learning it gives you a better comprehension on how some of these things pull together, how they manifest, how people can, harness the energy with the combination of the spirit realm combining in and really getting things to escalate out of control.
Yeah, and after all this,
he's very quiet. He's very humble. And Ken, you know how I am. He would just stand there and start laughing at me. I'd be cutting up, making jokes and everything, and he would just chuckle a little bit. And, it was just funny going back and forth because I'm no different with clergy than I am with anybody else. So need I say any more?
Exactly. Any questions from the chat room, Farrah? Didn't mean.
Well, other than, disclosing his trade secrets, we have people that are really wanting to know how far deeply into the Southwest do you go? Of course, Southwest being, lower Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. Do you get that far over?
I do, but today more so, I think, than ever before. If there's people I've worked with in the areas, I refer the cases. It's not so easy to travel. It's just so costly on all of us today.
Unfortunately.
That, if there's people I can refer or recommend, to help out with an investigation. But I still get involved with stuff worldwide, everywhere. There isn't anywhere I don't usually end up getting involved with something somehow or another with investigations.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's because you got the desire in your heart to help, and fortunately you have the tools. Another question we have from the chat room is, there are a lot of different New Age beliefs out there, which I'm sure you've heard of many, and there's many people that basically just either gloss over the New Age beliefs or discount them. There are a certain number of practices right now from people going into homes, and we actually encountered this with one of the house blessings we did, where we had someone that had basically come in before us and had supposedly bound a demon into a crystal. And we kind of scratched our chins, and I think I'd like you to answer that question for the audience because they're curious. What do you think of it? Have you encountered it? What's your opinion of somebody that believes they can bind a demon into a crystal and send it back to wherever it came from?
Well, it depends on the practice of the individual. Again, being in our field, I personally still practice through my Roman Catholic traditions and belief systems, but you have to remember we have people on the negative perspective that are very out there in the forefront today, and if they're going in and they're cutting some type of deal or they're doing something and they are binding this particular entity to an item, yes, that can be done, but that's a very risky thing, especially if the family is practicing from their faith base.
Yes.
So again, when dealing with this in our field, we all come up against this. We all deal with that, and I do the best that I can to explain to an individual if they get themselves involved with something like this that yes, that can be done. It does happen quite often. But very seldomly is it being done from, a Christian perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah,
it's dangerous. Very dangerous.
But it's a fact of what we all have to deal with today, and it's a fact of the way people perceive things and the way they handle things. It's a totally different world out there today when it comes into investigations and with people's belief systems, their traditions, and it's different. It's very, very different out there.
I agree. Wouldn't you agree with the exposure that people have? Because I was in ghost busting probably 30, 35 years ago on a very, very low level scale, not the level that you were on. And it was like, there was like a couple schools of belief you came from. Either you were Christian or you weren't. And there wasn't a lot of New Age information out there available to them. Now it's almost, if we have so much information at our hands that it's very easy for people to get confused or to not be able to adhere to a major belief system, whether, it's pagan or it's Christian or it's Hindu or it's Buddhism. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult and very mixed out there.
Yeah, and, that's been predicted. We would see this, in the future.
Exactly.
It's all been predicted, and we're all living it. We're seeing it. And again, it's a confusing time, and people evaluate and they look at things differently than even 10 years ago.
I have to agree with you. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I take everything in stride, and I try to explain, with in depth, just because, and I look at this a little bit differently, I think, today than I even did 10 years ago. And, when people make a decision, to leave their faith or to leave something, they have to come to terms with that. And they have to have an understanding that, at the end of the day, you have to have a belief system in something.
Exactly.
And you have to follow through with what it is, whether it be Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, it's a significant part of our lives because we need that positive.
Oh, I agree.
And sometimes people have to find their way. They're searching and they're looking. And
I agree.
You can give a person all the tools, and make recommendations to them, and you hope that they can follow a path of something on a positive level. It's unfortunate today. A lot of them just don't do it.
No. That's one of our favorite expressions. We throw a lot of lifelines out there, but very few of them actually get pulled back in. It's like we want to save everybody. We're ecumenical, but people take a look at our light coming from our boat, and they're like, I really don't know if I like that one. I think I'm going to stay out here and wait for the next lifeline. It's kind of crazy. It's it is. It breaks my heart a lot of times.
Yeah, it makes it hard and it makes it difficult. Because a tremendous amount of choices. That's what's thrown out there. It wasn't like that. But there was one thing that I abide by, and I stick very close to that, especially today, is that my uncle used to say this to me all the time. Old saying: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it.
Amen to that.
And it's a truth. And you can give all the information. You can relay everything that you possibly can. And let that person make their choice, and then that's up to them.
Yeah, that's basically bottom line what we all have to do. We've got a couple other questions from the chat room. They're coming in fast and furious. We may have touched on this one a little bit earlier, but people are curious as you're doing investigations and as you get involved with clients, either on the phone or going to meet them or going to see them. Do you ever suffer from any minor bouts of oppression that come through from these haunted objects or handling cases that are rather virulent and you can just feel them? They're so palpable. They want to know, how do you basically protect yourself before, during, or after if oppression hits you?
Continuously. As far as I'm concerned, before I go, I have a set of prayers that I do. I do that during the course of investigations, and I also do it afterwards. If I feel, that I'm being suppressed or anything, I have no qualms about going to several different spiritual locations. I have no qualms with spiritual people doing, prayers over me or a healing over me.
Mm-hmm.
We all need that. And we all will succumb to different things in our lives where you can be suppressed. And it's a common factor, whether dealing with the paranormal or just in our regular lives. Then when you combine the both of them, that's quite the big, enchilada. So again,
literally.
yeah, it really is. So you just have to watch, and you have to keep yourself on guard, when things are occurring and things are happening, so that you're aware of your surroundings. You learn to be able to watch for that. And, the key factor is, too, if you feel it or somebody says something to you, it's a significant thing to bring yourself back down to that grounding level. And that's usually what I do.
That sounds like a great place to start and keep yourself at. Another question we have here from the chat room is Andrew would like to say hello to you personally, and he would like to know if it's safe. Is it ever safe to do electronic voice captures, EVP, in any kind of demonic case when you're trying to prove something and basically ask about a haunting possession? Is it safe?
Again, this isn't something that I recommend for people to just start doing.
Yeah, we don't either.
You got to be careful, especially when we're dealing with the negative cases. I do, but you have to be. It's just not something they should just be doing randomly. And if you already have proof, and you have the circumstances, and you know what's going on, you witness things, or you already experienced something with the people you're trying to help, what in the world do you need to do EVPs for?
Thank you. I agree.
You don't.
So again, we don't.
Yeah. I mean, there's many of cases to this day I still get involved with. I'll work on them. I go and interview the individuals, and that's it. That's it right there. Okay. Yes, there's definitely spiritual activity going on in here. Now is the time for me to take that step back and turn it over to the clergy.
Exactly.
And and I still do that to this day. And, a lot of people say, well, don't you want to go in there and get the evidence? How much more evidence do I need?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, how many more EVPs? How many more photographs? How many more, different things do I need to be able to justify something? I mean, if clergy turns around and says, John, we need hard documented, evidence, EVPs or something videotaped or something, okay, then I'll look at that a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, no. I just adhere to that. I always have, and I always will. And a lot of researchers say that to this day. They go, you mean to tell me you will turn your case over to a clergy member and you will walk away from it? Yes, I will. Mm-hmm. Because I already did what I needed to do. I reached out, tried to help, tried to get them the help that they needed. Yes. So therefore, my job is done. Mm-hmm. My job's done.
You've done everything you can for them.
Yeah. I've done absolutely everything that I could possibly do. If the family or the clergy wishes me to still stay involved at that point in time, that's different, But there are cases where, hey, I get on the phone, hey, Father, this family needs to help, the parishioners and the Roman Catholic or depending on what the circumstances and the belief system is. And if they tell me to bow out of the picture, I'll bow right out because I'd rather see them get the help than worrying about a stupid EVP.
Oh, exactly. Well, you know what we try and tell people, too. I don't know if you've ever had this cross your desk, but we found that a lot of people that are not exactly good at protecting themselves, either before or after a capture, might take EVPs home and wonder why they're seeing activity in their home. Whereas otherwise there wouldn't be any. We tell them it's the same thing as a haunted object. You're giving something a legal right to your house and you brought it in and you're listening to it. What do you expect?
Because, again, people I find more so today than I've seen in the past where investigators get involved with this field and it turns into their whole life. That's dangerous.
Very much so.
That's extremely dangerous. 24/7 or worried about being on the internet. They're getting involved with this. They're listening to the EVPs. They're looking at the videos, and that is extremely, extremely unhealthy. Very unhealthy, and it puts you in a very vulnerable spot.
Wow. Couldn't agree more. We also have another question from the chat room coming in from a gentleman, Greg. He'd like to know, have you noticed considerably, as long as you have had experience with ghost hauntings, demons, have you noticed a greater surge in possessions, oppressions, serious cases now as opposed to maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago?
It's not so much that I feel that there's such a rise. I think we hear about more. And again, due to the internet.
Yes.
I think a lot more people talk about it. A lot more people bring things up to the forefront. Again, when we talk about true possession, I mean, it's still rare. You know, oppression is more common than anything else is.
That's
so again, you know, it's very difficult for me to be able to gauge something like that because nothing has really ever changed with me. I still get involved just as much as I did 10, 15, 20 years ago as far as cases or, you know, trying to figure out if something's legit or not legit. So, again, it's the same right across the board as far as I'm concerned.
Makes sense.
It does. Because they were always there. It's just our ability to find out about them is 1,000% quicker. We find that online in talking to a lot of people who claim to have a lot of experience with the opportunity to Google something. There's so many wiki masters out there that can claim they're anything and claim they know anything because of the ability to access readily available information at, 2 or 3 seconds.
No, that's
it's mind-blowing.
Sure. Yeah, I was listening to a guy's radio show once, and I can tell he was looking up all the answers. In Wikipedia, I actually copied a block and did a Google search and found out it came right out of Wiki, his answer. Like he was reading it online, and I was like, but he's really struggling hard to be, like John Zaffis of today's old. For example, because, like I said, you were a pioneer. You go back, and there's a lot of people, before The Conjuring came out, people were saying, Ed who? But they knew who you were. So, and it's interesting the way I don't know what you call it, the playfield? Mm-hmm. The way the internet, the public or whatever has changed just since I disappeared for 5 years. It has changed a little bit that way, I suppose. How did you get started in haunted collector? How did you get approached?
The original thing was we were just going to do it off the museum. I was just going to talk about an item, and then they were going to do reenactments, and then Sci-Fi decided no, they wanted us to research and dig into cases that tied in with haunted items, so that it was more current, and they felt that was more of a profound effect and people could relate to it. So that's basically how we ended up going down the journey of, going through a lot of the cases, because I always laugh. People go, well, every case you do has a haunted item. Yeah, it's called Haunted Collector. And people got very upset about a lot of things. They're going, John, you don't even go into demonology or anything, because I was not allowed to. On the Sci-Fi Network, if you watch the paranormal shows, you have to keep it very light. You can only go so far. They don't like you to go down the road with demonology. But we would get 800 cases that would come in, and we'd interview the people and talk to them and see if we could figure out if it could possibly be tying in with an item they brought in or something they had in there. And that's how we would choose the investigations that we would line up for the TV show.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that, I guess you probably didn't fall short of adding more items for your museum. Like I said, I think you're probably going to have 3 volumes, because you can have, like Night Gallery, you'd be like New Rod Serling if you did the original idea for Sci-Fi Network, which is interesting in itself. Maybe that's what they should reapproach. The original idea, instead of finding new and then following you around with a ghost cam or kind of common format, but a different show. Range it like Night Gallery, that kind of thing. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
We've got another question from the chat room, boys.
Yeah, hit it.
We have a really interesting one, which I'm kind of curious about because I know a little about this, and it's pretty. It's as bad as Satanism. We have a question, John, about Santeria, and if you've ever dealt with a family that has either experienced curses or that practice Santeria.
Well, again, curses, as we know, just go right across the board. They're not just affiliated with one practice.
Exactly.
Santeria, all of these different perspectives of practicing out there are, can be very hardcore, and they're very difficult cases to work with. So, yes, I've dealt with it continuously throughout the years. Voodoo, any of those, practices, anybody that gets involved with doing the demonology of it, eventually you're going to come up against it and get involved with those types of cases.
Yeah, it's some serious stuff. A lot of people don't understand that there's a big sort of mental separation. As we have another question here that if one makes the assumption that there are different sources of demons, such as the Hindu demon, and there's demons in Chinese mythology, and there's demons from just about every sort of Christian world religions, Buddhism, Islam has that genie, whatever his name is,
Jinn.
The jinn, exactly. Genie, jinn, you know what I'm talking about. So the question is that if they're not basically religion, they are regional. He wants to know that if you or I or somebody that walked in there that, we had our Christianity and we had our either a saint's relic or we had our sacramentals, would that affect what, you would not normally assume to be a Christian demon? He wants to know if we would have an effect on that sort of entity.
Yeah.
Yes and no. It's going to affect us per se if we're going from a Christian perspective because of the power within our prayer and our belief system. So therefore, that could be affecting us. If we're, a good example, we're dealing with a Muslim family. And within their practices, they believe very strongly within the jinn.
Yep.
And, you have to take that step back and see and evaluate what we're doing, how we're doing it, because you don't want to go in there from a Christian perspective trying to fix something that is going to have to be done from their faith. So therefore, you, as a demonologist, you have to be prepared to be able to work with other people, to be able to remedy and bring things forth to be able to help an individual. Because again, like I said, I'm a demonologist, paranormal investigator, haunted collector. I wear all kinds of hats, but when we deal with that, I have to respect another person's belief system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've learned a tremendous amount by dealing with that, and how to use some of those different things. Or if we're dealing with something else, with voodoo or Santeria, these are all things that you have to understand. And when the person isn't of a Christian faith, you have to be able to have the tools available to be able to contact somebody and say, hey, this is their structure, this is what they do, how they handle it, can you help them out? And, that's a person's choice. Because I'm the farthest thing from a Bible thumper, I will tell you that. I'm a lot like my uncle. Again, it's my belief systems. I practice, but from a Roman Catholic perspective, but I respect other people for what they do and what they believe in.
Well, that's what Christ calls us to. Exactly. And that's how, Ken and I basically approach our ministry, is that we respect everyone on the path that they're on right at this very minute. And we are going to be using, the methods that we know that work. And while respecting and honoring whether they are Muslim, they are Hindu, whether, they are Buddhists, we respect that. We're going to use our methods, and we're going to try and help combine our faith and their practices to get them the help they need. And we try and make it a happy medium. We've got a question from Deborah Shea. She'd like to know, because she's listening to us talk about, the various demons and, the various practices, and she's wondering if there's a book that you could recommend that cover any of this information that we're talking about right now.
Well, when you refer to demonology per se, there's a limited amount as far as in-depth things, and I feel it should remain that way.
Yes.
The Demonologist is a fantastic handbook. Father Patea's books that are out there. There's many books on demonology and different things per se. Rosemary Ellen Guiley's book on angels and demons goes into explanation of a lot of different things. So again, there's a tremendous amount of information out there today that could give you a broader and better understanding and a knowledge on some of the things with, the demonology, because I continuously hear this. People say, well, John, you should have that in a book. No, I'm not putting it in a book.
No.
A lot of the things that I get involved with, a lot of the spiritual people I work with, a lot of things that, I do, am I going to put all that into a book? Why? So it can get into the wrong hands and,
you've got a very important
No.
point there. You've got a very important point. And I have to tell you that that's something that there's so much uncommon knowledge in what you just said. Yeah. There's a certain amount of knowledge that, investigators that are starting out need to know, but the uncommon knowledge can only be learned from actual field experience.
Mm-hmm.
Should be.
And
it's important, and that's something that we've lost in the paranormal. You can't read a book, you can't just throw up a website, and you can't go out there and start working on all these cases. And that's a fact of what we all deal with today. I mean, never in a million years have you ever told me 5-6 years ago that we'd have a paranormal group established on every street corner. I would never believe it. But it's a fact today.
I know.
It is. And it's hard and it's difficult. And a lot of these people, and my best explanation to so many researchers out there, our field is no different than anything else. You need to mentor with people. Exactly. You need to establish relationships with spiritual people out there, because there's no, dial 911 exorcist that exists. It's just not there. I can't tell you how many paranormal groups will come. Give me the number of the local exorcist. No, no, I'm not doing it. Because again, I don't know you. I don't know the case. I don't know nothing, and I'm just not going to do that. And they'll get angry and mad at me, but I don't care. But again, you have to mentor.
It's about access. Yeah. Even Christ was very particular about who had direct access to him.
You got that right.
And they had to earn it. They had to earn it by following him. They had to pay a high price. And I think that, unfortunately, in our land of plenty, in our land of instant, people think that they can just turn on a channel, snap a button, pay $100, and instantly they have all the knowledge they want, and they've done nothing to earn it. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have, is that this is not something that you can earn. This is a grace that's given to you. They're a great deal of faith and experience.
I don't think demonology is for everybody. I don't.
No, it's not. It's really not.
I just don't. And, every paranormal group now, as soon as they say, oh, we got a demonologist, well, where'd you get him? Off the Cracker Jack box? What?
Thank you. Seriously.
And it's not, then I'll get it thrown back at me. Oh, you just want to be the only demonologist? No.
No.
No, I don't want to be the only one out there. I know many demonologists that are out there that are fantastic, good demonologists, and again, but they've learned their trade. They've learned about what the demonology field's about, and that's so critical, because in the long term, these individuals that just jump out there and start doing these things end up paying a price.
That's a really important point you make there. We have had a personal friend that was in this for many years, that was actually taught and trained by Ken, that was very holy, very spiritual, very Bible-based, and dealt with a severe case and basically end up losing everything: health, family, is in a nursing home due to the exposure to demons, and people don't believe this happens, and it does happen.
Yeah,
it does
and
happen.
They don't understand it. They just don't, and it's extremely difficult. Our world is a weird world, and I understand that, and I know that. There's people that can cut it, and there's people that can't. And that's it at the end of the day, and I watch it continuously. And there's even clergy that's out there that I will tell them, don't get involved with it. You're not cut out to do it. So again, whether you're a lay person or you're a person, of the cloth.
Curious, exactly, or the cloth. Yeah, not everybody is cut out. We have another question from the chat room, John. As you know, and I know, we do have our Catholic faith and our sacramentals, and some people are either, Christian or whatever, and they're curious about what sort of relics or sacramentals, what do you wear on you? What kind of armor do you protect yourself with before you step onto a residence that is possibly very, very evil?
Yeah.
I am more concerned with my prayers than anything else. There's many things that I do have in my bag that I carry with me.
Your toolkit?
Rosaries, crosses. I mean, on my body myself, I wear a cross that was given to me. I have a couple of medals that are in my wallet. I mean, but again,
relics, St. Benedict's medals, that kind of thing?
All of the above. I mean, again,
okay.
Yeah, but the most common thing that you'll always see me carry, and that was one thing that I was able to carry over into the show, is my sea salt.
Oh, wonderful!
Because,
yes, bless exercise.
Sea salt works on everything.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It really, really does.
Yeah,
that's excellent.
Exercise salt. Hey, what relic said is your favorite to carry? Ralph talks about he has a splinter of the True Cross.
Actually, Ken, I have several that it goes right across the board that have been they're basically family heirlooms that have been passed down through the family that I carry with me. I have a few of them in my Ghostbuster bag. I mean, it goes right across the board. There's several of the saints and several very, very personal things, that are relics that are with me at all times.
That's great. How far back do you go? We Zaffis is Irish descent, right?
We're not Irish.
Oh shoot! I'm sorry, John.
Nice faux pas, Ken.
Okay.
Nice faux pas.
Yeah, no. Ed was Polish.
Okay.
So again,
you guys are European, okay? You're European. That's close.
That's okay. That's okay. Lorraine's Irish.
Okay.
But again, something I had found out, and it was very odd, and it was extremely sad that I had found out after Ed had gone down. A mutual couple of people within the family were telling me that my grandfather had, at several different times, Ed's father had been called to do part of the prayer thing in the church when exorcisms were done.
That's interesting.
And it drove me crazy because it was something I never heard about. No one ever mentioned it. Ed never brought it up to me, and I often wondered, did Ed even know about it? And, it was just something that was interesting and intriguing to me from a couple of the family members from the church where they all grew up and everything had mentioned it. And I went, you got to be kidding me. I said, I never heard this. Never, ever. I said, because the understanding I had, my grandfather, Ed's dad and my mom's dad never wanted anything to do with the paranormal, never wanted anything discussed about the paranormal. But then I thought about that. Is that the reason why? Because he already knew. So I don't know. Then I had found out on my father's side of the family, which is Greek, that they had a bishop over in one of the islands that used to get very involved with exorcisms. So I said, geez, I had a double whammy in all these years. I never knew it.
Yeah, well, there you go. See, it's not just because Uncle Ed, it's in your own. It's in your blood, John.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, it was very strange finding some of these things out after, the facts, because it's just crazy. And the way it all tied in and the way it started happening was that I started getting involved with doing research, genealogy, on both sides of the family. And this is how I ended up finding out this information. And I went, wow, both sides of my family, somebody in between there, on both sides were actually involved with the paranormal field. I said, but wonder why I ended up being a basket case.
That's interesting. My parents passed away, within 8 months of each other in the last year and a half. That was unexpected because they weren't that old. It caught me off guard. But, something I find is I can't call my dad and ask, talk about things in the news and that kind of thing. But, then I realized, it's like, okay, who was my mom's cousin? What was his name? Monsignor. And I call my Aunt Gracie, and she's going to try to dig up genealogy stuff. I might have to do genealogy stuff to learn out who somebody's priest who mentored me when I was growing up as a kid. And I'd ask questions instead of about Jesus. They would say, does the devil do this, or that? And, and I know most of them passed away, but I don't even know their names. And it's like, how did that happen?
I know. It's bizarre. And Ken, I went through the same thing because, as I know, a lot of our parents and our grandparents, they just never mentioned things. They didn't bring things up.
Yeah.
And if you didn't think to ask them about things, they never would tell you. It's just the way families were. And like I said, it was unfortunate when I started getting interested in genealogy a few years back that, digging into things and starting to find out a lot of different things. I was just like totally amazed at the things that you find out that they never told you about in the families.
Oh, that's true. Hopefully more good than bad, right?
No,
I didn't know it so much
good than
later either. My mother and father were married by a bishop that was one of my mom's, uncles or something like one of those type of things. And I wanted to find out if I heard just correctly that he was one of the bishops around at the time. Because he was in St. Louis. Alexian Brothers was right there. He was the bishop of that diocese. So now they're gone, and my aunt doesn't seem to know anything yet. So I might find out my mom's uncle was, one who authorized the haunted boy case. The Exorcist movie was inspired from. Wouldn't that be weird? So things in St. Louis.
It is because, like I said, you start digging in, and it's just amazing sometimes finding out what some of the connections really are.
We're getting close to the end of the show. As there is any more chat questions that we want to pop in there real quick, and then we'll have John give us his website. You still have johnzaffis.com and some other things they can follow your events, and you have a lot of college circuits. I think you're still with GP Entertainment. You've been with them for years, and they get you around, and you'll be by here, and you'll also be doing a lecture.
Yes, when I'm at Pythian, I will definitely be doing a lecture. I believe it's the 16th or the 17th that I'm out there. Isn't that terrible, Ken? I don't pay attention to anything.
That's my wife. That's me.
I honestly don't. I honestly don't. I'm just scrolling right now. We are at Pythian Castle, August 16th.
August 16th.
Yes.
So
no, it's definitely on, and I'm definitely there. Nobody's schedules are getting changed at this point in time, so we should be all set.
Yeah, that's good to hear. On your website, can people buy directly from you and get it signed, for example?
Yes, they're on johnzaffis.com, which brings you into all of the websites. There's a store on there with DVDs, the books, T-shirts, and all those different things are available on there also.
Okay. That's the best site to go to because it's the one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I wanted to ask you about Mary Vogel. That's what her name was on the show, but I guess we'll have to have you on another time. Would you like to come back on a couple months if you're not too busy?
Absolutely, sir. You got it.
That's great. And it's
a lot of people were very, very excited, and there's a lot of excitement about your tours and where you're going to be appearing at, John. And we just thank you so much for making the beginning of our season a rather exciting one with all the interest you've generated. And how we're trying to help people and educate them on what we can.
Well, we all do the best that we can, and, we just keep trucking along. And my whole thing that I always say, we could deal with 10 people, and if we can help 1 or 2 people, we've accomplished something.
Amen to that. You're
That's what
100% right.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, John, and
okay.
Stay in touch.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Thank you so
God
much for
bless
having me on, and we'll be talking. We'll see you shortly.
Okay.
Thanks so much,
bye-bye.
John. All
God
right,
bless.
Bye-bye.
John has left the house. We'll have him back on. Let's see if we can get him on in October. Something shooting on a night. Some of the events that are coming up. And it's cool to know that you can get his books and then, get them signed. JohnZaffis.com. If you buy them from Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble, you're not going to get them signed. And does that sound familiar, Farrah? Is it we have to point people to our own personal website?
That's true.
And
www.swordsofstmichael.org, or you can find us at www.catholicdemonologist.com or www.christiandemonologist.com. We answer to just about anything. Just call us for dinner, folks.
We also have demonologytoday.com. I'm trying to vamp it up a little bit. And if you click on shop, there's book links. We can get the purchases through there. You can use major credit cards, and it'll go processed through PayPal. And our 5 books are available there. The Catholic and Christian Demonologist Handbooks, as well as the last book, Haunting Self-Help Guidebook. Christian Protocols for Haunted Investigations is the one that's going to be coming out next. And that'll be sold on there, of course, too, after it's published. But we will sign them, just as long as you tell us who to sign it for, if it's somebody other than the addressee.
Hey, let's not forget to thank Paraspeak Radio and all our hosts and everybody else. Don't forget to tip your bartenders, waitresses, and anybody else you can think of tonight before you hit the hay, folks.
Yeah, Rob and the gang did a fabulous job, and walking me through the technical aspects. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. And we have some of our friends in there we want to say hello to. Greg Gilman, of course, our co-producer, Deborah Johnson. We have Deborah Shea in there, who we met at one of the conventions that we went to recently. Tracy Bacon was in the house earlier. He gets up earlier in the morning, I guess. Usually leaves at the first hour. Yeah. And some others, and Jeanette Osborne was in there earlier. I meant to ask John about that case about the mask, but he never received them. Next week, Ralph Sarchi. She has the movie Deliver Some Evil. It's about his experiences, kind of combined into one case and Hollywoodized a little bit, as he'll tell you. We already had him on at the end of May of this year. But he's coming back to, talk shop with us, so we enjoy hanging out and talking with Ralph and vice versa. So we're going to have some coffee table conversations about the topics at hand. And then we have spiritual warfare, Roman Catholic priest, Father Brian DiTullio, and Adam Bly, who we mentioned on the show, somebody who's worked with John, will be on the following week on the 13th of August and August 20th, roundtable most likely. And then we have the co-author of the book Deliver Some Evil, which was called Beware Tonight. Lisa Hollier-Cool will be on August 27th, and we'll be talking more about the book and the movie. Various things will come out between us and Ralph, but look forward to that, definitely. So we'll just close on that note, and we'll just say thank you, everybody, for showing up tonight. Have a wonderful week. Don't forget, same time, same channel.
Good night.
Good night, and God bless.
This network may contain controversial topics. The views and opinions expressed on the Paraspeak Radio Network are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other network hosts or advertisers.
You are listening to WPAR Digital Broadcasting, home of the Paraspeak Radio Network.
Another dimension.
And these entities, they're set out to destroy your life. And you can let them or you can fight it.
She was exercised and voices came out of her that were not in any way her voice.
It's like a black whirlwind of energy. So a really dark figure. The eyes really drew me in. So pitch black, took me and slammed me back to the bed on my back. In there, paralyzed. The chair with him moved back about 5 feet with him in it.
It started walking across the floor, and he said, beware.
Just remarkable. Things would fall right from the ceiling.
Going into a haunted house is like the last thing I want to do.
Demonology Today.
Demonology Today. Class is now in session.
Welcome to Demonology Today. It's our network premiere on Paraspeak Radio Network, and we call it, Season 4.5. We changed networks mid-season, but we consider it kind of like a premiere show because it's a premiere on the network. And as usual, we like to get a great guest on.
Okay, Johnny Zaffis is more than great, but you can downplay him.
So John goes way back, and we're going to ask questions that I otherwise wouldn't ask him because
he's not going to tell you his age. I already asked him.
He's considered the godfather of the paranormal for a good reason, but I think there's a generation probably knew him more for the haunted collector, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But welcome to the show, John.
Well,
welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
And it has been a while since I've had you on a radio show, about 7 years. I took my little hiatus break, with family problems, as I had told you. And I tell you what, it's good to have you back on again. I remember the old days.
Oh, hey, again, it's like I said, it's always good to come on and chit-chat and catch up.
Cool. But I'm going to ask questions for the benefit of our listeners. You ever know we consider this like a coffee table show where we discuss things amongst ourselves instead of just a Q&A kind of thing. But I think that, for the benefit of the listeners, I'd like them to go back in time and ask you how it all began with your involvements in the paranormal and what you do.
Well, I was 15, 16 years old, had a sighting of a shadow form at the foot of the bed. It was very tall, transparent, and it was dark in color, and it was shaking its head back and forth, and went downstairs and started telling my mom about it. And I described everything to her, and she said, did it say anything? I said, no. I said, just the